Hi, everybody, and welcome back again. Let's continue the discussion about endocrine physiology. As you remember, I told you in the first part some basic information about the endocrine system, definitions of the endocrine system, and the hormone. And then I told you that the endocrine system is a concept that could be um viewed as a wider view, and by this definition that I told you, lots of cell in the body were involved in the process of the endocrine communication. Um, I also told you about the classification of the hormone. Now I'm going to discuss about the hormone secretion, uh, and talk about hormone secretion and then transport and clearance of a hormone in the body. Um, the hormone secretion in the body is controlled by different type of mechanism. I mean that hormones should be controlled separately and completely by some mechanism to not allow the hormone secretion to be uncontrolled, because the same amount of importance that the hormone has for us, it also has for us to the importance has for us to control its secretion. And there are several mechanisms. One type of mechanism that is almost the prevalent and the dominant mechanism is negative feedback. Another is positive feedback, feed forward mechanism. Also, circadian rhythm and neural pathway that affect the regulatory mechanism are important in the regulation of the hormones. Let's start with the negative feedback. When we are talking about negative feedback, in negative feedback, that you know that negative feedback is found it could be found in any other systems also, not just in biological system. uh, in the negative feedback, in fact, hormone itself or its effect will be able to inhibit itself and its secretion. In this way, I can say that negative feedback is a self-regulatory mechanism that we have for each hormone. There are two type of negative feedback. One type is named as axis-driven negative feedback. In the axis-driven negative feedback that you can see here, hypothalamus release a hormone that is named as releasing hormone. And this releasing hormone affect the pituitary gland, and pituitary gland release a hormone that is named as trophic hormone. Pay attention that this trophic hormone not only will affect the target organ to release a hormone, the final hormone, for example, adrenal gland to release cortisol. This trophic hormone also form a short feedback loop to the hypothalamus, and also on itself. Pay attention, a hormone is released by one cell, and this hormone affects itself in the autocrine manner. And this hormone will inhibit the release of the releasing hormone from hypothalamus, and also the releasing of trophic hormone from the anterior pituitary. These feedback loops are named as ultra short feedback loop and short feedback loop. On the other hand, trophic hormone also affect the target gland such as adrenal, thyroid, genital gland, and this target gland release the final hormone. This final hormone will make, and again, a long feedback loop that will go back to the hypothalamus, and in the hypothalamus level it will inhibit the hypothalamus. Also, it generates a short feedback loop that affect the pituitary gland to inhibit the trophic hormone. In fact, feedback mechanism with different loops try to maintain the hormone at a specified set point and do not allow the hormone to decrease or increase from this set point. This set point is being set in the hypothalamus, and it is not fixed. I will tell you a little bit later that it is not fixed. Just this set point is the criteria for regulation of the hormone. This is axis-driven negative feedback. But another type of negative feedback is response-driven. And in the response-driven negative feedback, regardless of the hormone and hormone concentration, the physiological effect will generate a feedback loop and inhibit the target gland. In fact, not hormone concentration, but the physiological effect or response of the hormone will inhibit the organ. This is named as response-driven negative feedback. In this figure, you can see the response. The hormone is released, and the response will inhibit the actual hormone releasing factors. Let me bring you one example. For example, insulin is stimulated by high glucose concentration in the blood. When insulin is released, then the response of insulin is to uptake the insulin from the blood. Therefore, blood glucose concentration will decrease. When blood glucose concentration is decreasing, then the stimulator for insulin will be inhibited. Therefore, it is clear that insulin secretion will be inhibited. This is negative feedback, or the type of negative feedback that I told you is named response-driven negative feedback. About the negative feedback, there are some points that these are very important for you to know. Firstly, is that the physiological set point of the hormone secretion is not zero. I mean, it is not at the level of zero that hormone is being regulated. Hormone has a continuous set point of secretion that every time we need, this will be stimulated, and every time that we do not need, the concentration and secretion will decrease. In fact, the hormone could be regulated in two directions: increasing or decreasing the set point or the constant concentration. And this is important because, by this way, a hormone is able to do effect in two directions. Let me to bring you one example. For example, insulin. Not only insulin is able to decrease the blood glucose, but also when baseline insulin is inhibited, therefore the glucose concentration could be increased, but just by inhibiting the insulin secretion. Another point that you should know about the negative feedback is the role of opposing loops. In this fact, in the feedback mechanism, there are loops that are against each other. And one hormone is increasing the insulin concentration, glucose concentration. Another is decreasing the glucose concentration. They are fighting against each other. Or PTH try to increase calcium concentration, calcitonin try to decrease it. They form opposing loop that fight against each other, and by this way, the concentration of calcium or glucose will be set and will be regulated much more better than before. This is another key point. The third key point that you should know about negative feedback, as I told you, is that set point for a hormone regulation is not fixed. I told you before. And sometimes the set point will be increased. Therefore, the hormone will be set to that set point. Sometimes it is decreased. Therefore, the set point will be, the negative feedback will work to regulate the hormone at this level. This show that set points could be changed. Now I have lots of evidence that show that these change in the set point may be endogenous, for example, according to the time of day and night, or any other reason. But set point, the point is here that set point is not constant. Another point that you should know about the negative feedback is that we have two types of negative feedback according to the open loop or closed loop. The closed loop means one factor stimulates the hormone and the hormone will affect the same factor. Therefore, we have a closed loop. For example, we say glucose stimulates insulin secretion and insulin affects the glucose. We have a closed loop. But sometimes we have open loop negative feedback. In the open loop negative feedback, a hormone is stimulated by one factor that the hormone this factor is not affected by the same hormone. For example, we say that the crying of a baby will stimulate oxytocin release and extrusion of milk from the breast of the mother. But this oxytocin do not have any effect on the sound of the baby, or it has nothing on the crying procedure of the baby. It generates milk to make to feed the baby. Therefore, there is not a constant condition to say that this is the set point for the regulation. We cannot say if the baby's sound reach this level, the hormone will be inhibited. It is not possible. They are completely open. Another type of regulatory mechanism for hormone concentration and hormone release is positive feedback. You know that positive feedback is a time-bounded mechanism. It is not able to continue for a long time. And in the positive feedback, one factor stimulates a hormone, and the hormone will stimulate and potentiate that the factor again, and this will continue to one point, time point that it is finished. For example, during the parturition, you know that the pressure inside the womb will stimulate the oxytocin, and oxytocin stimulate the contraction of the endometrial myometer of the and therefore increase the pressure. More pressure, more oxytocin, and more oxytocin, more pressure, to the point that finally will be the baby will go out from the mother's body. At this point, the positive feedback will finish. Therefore, positive feedback is time bounded. It is not continuous. Another example is during the menstrual cycle in female, that estradiol will stimulate the LS secretion, and LS secretion will stimulate the estradiol, and I will discuss about it. There is a short period time of the positive feedback. Finally, we have another mechanism named as feed-forward mechanism. All these mechanisms regulate the secretion of hormone. And in feed-forward mechanism, one hormone will be released in advance of the stimulus. For example, we say that a mother see the baby that is crying. She predicts that this baby need to be fed with breastfeeding, and therefore the oxytocin start to release in ahead and in forward, in advance to the feeding process. This is feed-forward mechanism that we should know about. Okay. One of the main factors that affect the feedback mechanism and set point of the feedback mechanism is circadian rhythm, and we know that circadian rhythm affect the regulatory mechanism of the hormone secretion. And now I'm going to discuss about this. As you can see in this figure, the body and the physiology of body is not constant at all, and every night and days there are some fluctuation in the function of the body. In the body temperature, you see that the body temperature is dropping during the night times and then increasing during the day times. On the other hand, the blood pressure also shows some fluctuation. During the night it is decreasing, and then during the day it is increasing. The same change also could be seen in the function and performance of the people, of all peoples, but not just in human, but also in the animal territory. We see that they have some fluctuation during the day and night. This change that we see in their function is mainly coming from the hormonal system. And because the set point for the regulation of hormones are not fixed. For example, as you see, the hormone, growth hormone, it reach its highest level during the night time, the early hours of the night time, after sleep, for example, about midnight, and then decrease during the remaining of the night, and then reach the lowest level at the morning. At the same time, you can see that plasma ACTH, that is responsible for regulation of the cortisol, is decreasing gradually during the day to midnight, and from midnight start to increase and reach its highest level at the time of morning, after waking up. Again, another hormone that you see here is melatonin. Again, melatonin show highest concentration during the late night times. What is the meaning of this change that you can see? It shows that body change the set point for different hormone during the day and night time. It receives information from different sources, particularly from light and darkness, and then try to set itself accordingly, and set the set point differentially. For example, for the cortisol, the set point will be higher at the morning time, and therefore the hormone concentration will reach the highest level. But for the growth hormone, the midnight is the highest set point, and at the morning time the set point is very low. This generates a rhythmical circadian rhythm for the human and for animals, most animals. Some animals are nocturnal, some are active during the daytime, and human also normally and physiologically is active during the daytime. As you can see in this figure, most hormone use the hypothalamic pituitary gland axis to govern the circadian rhythm, because hypothalamus is connected to the other area of the nervous system, particularly the visual system. Therefore, receive information about the light and darkness, and also other information, for example, about the temperature change, about the even sound. All are important, and then receive information, and according to this axis, hypothalamus activate or inhibit pituitary gland, and then pituitary gland regulate growth hormone, prolactin, thyroid hormone, gonadal steroid, growth hormone, cortisol. This is one way that we have circadian rhythm. Another way that we have a circadian rhythm is not governed by hypothalamus and pituitary gland. Instead, the nutrient govern these oscillation. For example, for insulin or adipokine, there is no connection between the pituitary gland, hypothalamus for insulin. However, we know that insulin, it could be regulated by autonomic nervous system, but most important factor that is regulating these hormones is the eating behavior, environmental behavior. For example, during the daytime, when we eat several times for several times, therefore it is clear that every time that we eat a food, it increases the insulin's concentration, and every time that we are fasting, it will decrease. And most frequently during the night time we are fasting, and during the daytime we are eating. This is another way that we set some circadian rhythm for our hormones. Normally, darkness and light, nutrient, and other information that are coming to our brain and our body regulate the body the best way to optimize the performance of the body. And as you can see that in this table, almost all hormone, except some very limited ones such as FSH and T4, most hormones are showing circadian rhythm. Some in the morning, some in the midnight, some in the afternoon, and this is showing that body set itself according to its performance and need. And for this reason, we say that those who have not a normal circadian rhythm, for example, like your students, that you know that sometimes you are sleeping during the day and then awake from the in whole night. This is not good for the body. As you can see, there are all this information will be gathered together to set the time in the hypothalamus. And you know that in the hypothalamus we have some genes that their expression is under a timing, clear timing in the body. And accordingly, every time, please pay attention, every time that brain is receiving information that is not matched with internal clock of the brain, there will be inconsistency, and this inconsistency may cause over time disease and problem for the body. You can see the cyclical variation that we have in different hormones such as ghrelin, leptin, melatonin, growth hormone, insulin, and as you see, each of them are active during one time, and there are lots of genes that are involved in this process that make the whole body, almost whole organ in the body, time dependent organ. For example, you can see heart, lung, adipose tissue show different type of function during night and day and night. Or for example, intestine, or even reproductive system, bone, brain. It means that we should care about the timing of our body and try to match ourselves and internal clock of our brain to the external clock of the day and night. You know that those who are working against their circadian rhythm, for example, those who are working as night shifts and night works, they are advised to receive a higher salary, because these works are a little against their health. And as you see in this figure, it is like a bomb that we have in our brain. It shows that finally sleep deprivation and disrupted circadian rhythm may cause severe problem for future of the people. And it is very common that they say that those who are working at different time of the day and night should be retired earlier, because they have a work that is against the health. And several other titles are available showing that those people that have not a normal circadian rhythm have disease problem, more pathological problem later in their life. And on the other hand, those who are working and sleeping according to the timing, completely restrict timing. For example, every night I am sleeping at 11 and I am waking up at 6. And this is a rule for me, not for me, for those who are using these rules for themselves. They have better life. Some studies show that those who expose themselves to external or outdoor light at the morning time and work at natural lights and outdoor light, and then during the night they fall asleep at timing with low level of light or in the darkness, will have better life. They have less psychological problem, less pathological problem. And those who are living in some homes that they have not window, they are sleeping under artificial light, and when it is morning time they do not come out for exposing themselves to the outdoor light. They have a problem with the timing of their brain. And for this reason, for human, it's extremely important to work and to expose the body to external or outdoor lights that I told you about it. There are several other title. We have not enough time to discuss about all of them, but I was just going to tell you that these clearly show that circadian rhythm is a part of our normal physiology, and one way that this circadian rhythm exert its effect on our body physiology is through the different regulation that it has on our hormonal system. And in human, the circadian rhythm is important, but in animals, even the seasonal rhythm is also important. For example, in some animals, in some times during the year, they have reproductive system functioning, but other time the reproductive system is not working. In some time during the year, for example, body is storing the energy sources, and in another time, for example, during winter time, the body decrease its metabolism to preserve these metabolic resources. This shows that body is able to set itself and set the hormonal system, even not during day and night, or even during the winter, autumn, spring or summer times. And they have a seasonal physiology. This seasonal physiology, it seems that largely is being faded out in the human. However, some scientists believe that some degree of this seasonal physiology still remains in some human. And this is another aspect of hormonal regulation. Okay, until now, I told you about the secretion and mechanism of secretion of hormones as the regulatory mechanism that we have for secretion of the hormone. But secretion is not all the stuff that we should know about the hormone. When the hormone is secreted, the next step is the transport of the hormone in the blood. And for hormones that are steroid hormone and hormones that are amine, such as, and hormones that like thyroid hormone, that they are not easily dissolved in the water environment, they should have some carrier for them. We should have some carrier that bind the hormone to itself and move the hormone in the blood. You know that cortisol is a steroid hormone, and a steroid is not dissolvable in the water environment of the blood. What will happen then? We expect that this cortisol should have some protein as carrier, and we know that liver is very active in this matter, because that there are some proteins that are produced by liver, such as named as corticosteroid binding globulin or transcortin, and this protein is specific for cortisol and aldosterone. In fact, they are carrier for aldosterone and cortisol. There is a protein named as thyroxine binding globulin that is specific for thyroxine and T3 hormone, transfer of this hormone. There is another hormone named as sex hormone binding globulin, responsible for transferring the testosterone or estradiol in the body. There are also some proteins that are not specific. All these hormones could be attached to it, and they are general carriers, such as albumin. You know that albumin is being produced by the liver in high concentration, and the highest concentration of albumin could be found in the blood. And these hormones attach to this albumin and the specific ones and travel across the body. By this definition that I told you, it is very clear that the concentration of these carrier hormones also is important for the function of these hormones. Every time that concentration of this carrier is decreasing, therefore the capacity of blood to transfer the hormone will be decreased, and therefore the function of the hormone will be affected negatively. The right graph that you can see on your screen is showing that when a hormone that is not dissolvable in the blood is released into the blood, very, very little of this hormone will remain as free, but most of this hormone will be attached to the carrier proteins, and these attached complex make a resource for the hormone, will serve as a resource for the hormone. Everywhere in the body that concentration of free hormone is decreasing, the hormone from the protein will be released. Everywhere that free hormone is high, some hormone will be degraded and cleared from the body, and some of these free hormone will affect the receptor and generate the response. For this reason, hormones that are attached to carrier protein, presumably, generally have a higher half-life in the body, because most of the hormones are preserved from clearance mechanisms and work as buffer for the concentration of the hormones. After hormone exert their effect, it is very important now to terminate its function, because remaining the hormone concentration high in the blood, it is dangerous. To that much importance that hormone has for us, clearance of these hormones also is important. Let me bring you one example. You know that insulin is very important for us, and absence of insulin makes several problems for the body, and even it can be dangerous. But on the other hand, when insulin is released into the body, it can increase the glucose uptake and control the glucose concentration. But at the same time, if if insulin remain in the blood for a long time, it can cause severe hypoglycemia and even cause death. Therefore, we say that this insulin should remain in the blood for a very short period of time, or half-life of the insulin should be very short. There are several, body have several pathways and several mechanisms to either clear and get rid of the hormone, or trap them in the tissues. For example, you know that some hormone will be attached to some tissues that are not target tissue, just they are trapped in these tissues. And then gradually these tissue endocytose these hormone and metabolize them, and therefore the hormone will be cleared. Another mechanism that we have is the destruction of the hormone by the metabolic cells that we have in different area of the body, particularly in the liver, but other area of the body, but other cells of the body also have this capacity. For example, for cortisol, even skin cells are able to convert cortisol into cortisone. You know that this is inactivation. Inactivation is also a clearance way, because when the cortisone is formed, we are sure that this has no effect for the body, either though that this cortisone is still remaining in the blood, no problem, because it has not effect on our body. Sometimes body need to reactivate this hormone again. It will uptake the cortisone and convert it back into cortisol. Therefore, we have a shuttle of the cortisol and cortisone. Another way of clearance is excretion of the metabolite or its hormone or its metabolite through the kidney or through the liver. And this is the way that we are getting rid of a hormone in the body. Therefore, please pay attention to this clearance pathway of the blood, of the hormone from the blood. Now, the next point about the hormone's function is how hormones do activity for us. What is the mechanism of hormone action? You know that hormones will be received and hormone will activate some receptor on the hormone on the cells to do the activity of their hormone. Therefore, receptors play an essential role in the regulation of hormone function. Without receptor, we have no hormone function. We have several hormones that do not have any function on some cell in the body because they have no receptor. What are the characteristics of the hormone receptor? There are some characteristics that you should know very well. Let me show it as a starter slide. I mean that you should pay attention to these items. Firstly, receptor for hormone are very specific. They distinguish their hormone specifically, not another hormone. The second characteristic of receptor is that they are very sensitive. They can bind to their ligand even in a very, very low concentration. There is no need for high concentration of hormone. These receptors are able to do a conformational change, and this conformational change start a cascade of events inside the whole cell. And this is another characteristic of receptors. And by this way, they catalyze a series of events inside the cell. Have a look at this figure. As you see, this hormone is available everywhere, but just those cells that are shown in blue show the response of this hormone, because the receptors are available. But for this cell that you see here, there is no receptor. Therefore, they do not receive. Even this hormone is being entering the cell, but it has no effect. The receptor of the hormone have two domains. Please pay attention. One domain is binding domain that specifically bind to its hormone, a specific hormone. Therefore, the hormone 1 is not able to attach to the receptor of hormone 2 because they are different shapes. There is another domain in the receptor that is named as transducing domain. And you know that transducing domain is responsible for converting the signal from the receptor into the response inside the cell. Therefore, we say the receptor 1 generate response 1 and the hormone 2 generate response 2. One experiment showed that if you make a hybrid from the binding domain of hormone 1 and the transducing domain of hormone 2, the response will be generated is the response 2. It means that transducing domain determine if the what would be the response of this hormone. The hormone receptor are located in different areas. Some hormone receptor are located at the membrane of the cell because hormones are not able to enter the cell. For example, for protein hormones. Some receptor of the hormone are placed inside the cytoplasm. For example, for the hormone of cortisol, a steroid hormone. Some hormones receptor are located inside the nucleus. They are named as nuclear receptor. For this receptor, hormone should enter the cell and then enter the nucleus and form the complex with this receptor and affect different genes and responses. For example, thyroid hormone, vitamin D, vitamin A, all these hormones the receptor are located inside the nucleus. On the other hand, another point that you should know about the hormone receptor is that hormone receptor are not fixed. Sometimes body need higher level of activity. Therefore, the receptor for this hormone is increasing. And we have upregulation mechanism. Have a look. Here we have just two receptors. For example, this is schematic. We have just two receptors, but by upregulation, the receptor is increasing several times. On the other hand, sometimes a cell wants to decrease its response to a hormone. And this time, the number of receptors is decreasing. It is named as a down regulation. This is another mechanism that body use for regulation of the hormones. By this slide, therefore I can summarize my topic and this topic about introduction about the endocrine system. In this topic, I told you some introduction about the endocrine system and the mechanism of their action, regulation, different type of regulation. And when you know this principle, you can understand that how this endocrine system could be a subject of different diseases, such as hormone overproduction, a hormone that is not controlled well and is produced in high concentration. On the other hand, hormone underproduction, a hormone that is not released in enough amount. For example, hypothyroidism. In the hormone overproduction, we have Cushing disease, hyperthyroidism. Underproduction, hypothyroidism, Addison disease. Sometimes hormone concentration has not a problem. We have a problem in the response to that hormone. Tissue response to the hormone is decreased. For example, diabetes type 2, that we have insulin resistance. We have not a problem with hormone concentration. And sometimes we have tumors in the endocrine gland. That this is another problem. Okay, this is a summary of all the stuff that I told you in this section. And by this slide, I'm going to to say it session and finish this part. From next session, I will start to discuss about each endocrine gland, main endocrine gland, such as adrenal, thyroid gland, and other main endocrine gland separately in each session. By that time, have a good time and take care. Goodbye.